Hi, I'm Jacob Hornberger, president of the Future of Freedom Foundation here in Fairfax, Virginia. And this is this week's issue of the Libertarian Angle. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Richard Ebeling, who teaches economics at the Citadel. Richard, good to see you again.
Good to be with you and our viewers and listeners.
Yeah, likewise. Well, Richard, your book is doing fantastic. Well, I should say our book. We published the book. It's called Austrian Economics and Public Policy, Restoring Freedom and Prosperity. And then that's the book. We've also got a video series that goes with the book that we just posted part 8 to yesterday, an introduction to Austrian economics. But Richard, the book is, there you got the book title there. It's was doing fantastic. On Amazon's list of top best-selling 100 books on economic theory, ebooks, it is now number 1 and has been number 1 for the last couple of days. It's number 8 in ebooks on political freedom, and then remarkably, it's number 17 on all books on the subject of political freedom, both print and ebooks. So this is really a good sign, Richard. I mean, people are interested in Austrian economics. Well, we already know that. There's a large segment of the libertarian movement that is interested in Austrian economics. But this is kind of exciting that the book seems to be taking off here.
Yes, it's amazing, and it's obviously a thrill and a delight for me. As you just said, if you go into the academic world, that is universities, colleges, Austrian economics has more of a profile, that is, people know about it or at least have heard about the Austrian school, compared to, let's say, 40-odd years ago, when the Austrian economic revival only began. Though now there are institutions of higher learning where one can actually take courses on Austrian economics. The most notable one, of course, just in your neck of the woods in Fairfax, Virginia, at George Mason University, headed brilliantly by a faculty member there named Peter Betke, who I very happily can refer to as a dear and valued friend. But in general academia, Austrian economics is still sort of on the periphery of the mainstream of what is taught. But out there in the general public, the informed, interested layman, citizen, voter, particularly as discovered through the internet, blogs, websites, and so on, there's a vast underground of interest and discussion and thirst for information and knowledge about the Austrian School of Economics. And to be honest, I'm very flattered and humbled, and I mean that sincerely, that my book, which only came out at the end of August, has obviously been of interest and of value, and has been recommended as word of mouth, no doubt, to so many people that on Amazon its ratings have been so high. And as you pointed out, amazingly, almost 2 months after it has appeared, it's still in number 1, number 2. It's amazing. But I think that shows the growing interest and relevancy and appreciation of this unique approach to understanding how the real world works.
Yeah, I agree with you, and it is exciting that when you and I first started talking about this project, it really started out as the video project, that we wanted you to do a series of lectures on Austrian economics, sort of an easy-to-understand introduction to the principles of Austrian economics, what it's about, and so forth. And so we arrived at that understanding, hey, let's do the video series, and that consists of 9 parts. We just posted part 8, and all those parts are on our website, and we'll be following that with part 9. And that series is just an awesome introduction to the principles of Austrian economics. It's like each one's about 20 or 25 minutes, so easy to watch. And then you came up with the idea, I think, that said, hey, why don't we do an ebook as part of this project? Or maybe I can't remember who came up with the idea, but man, we've jumped on it, and this is a fantastic book. I mean, it's like, what, 40 chapters or so? I mean, if anybody wants an introduction to what Austrian economics is all about, seems to me that this book is the book to get. And so the whole project's really turned out to be very exciting, Richard.
Yes. The series, as you said, was meant to be brief videos. On average, they run from about 15 to 17 minutes to no more than about 25 each segment. And it was meant to offer the interested viewer, listener, the opportunity to be led through the main core ideas of what the Austrian School of Economics is about. For example, part one, I attempted to give sort of a family tree overview of the Austrian school, from its founder, Karl Menger, who originated it in a book that he wrote in the 1870s, through those who were immediately inspired by him, such as Eugen von Böhm-Bawerk, who developed the Austrian theory of capital and interest, to Friedrich von Wieser, who focused on the theory of opportunity cost and the pricing of the factors of production, to then, of course, the masters of the Austrian school in the 20th century, Ludwig von Mises and Friedrich Hayek, and some who have come after, most notably such Austrians as Israel Kirzner and Murray Rothbard, in terms of the most important figures in the slightly older generation of the mid-20th century. And after having given this overview in part one of the school and its ideas and its contributors, I then explained, what is the Austrian approach? How does it view man, society, the social order? How does this relate to the nature of understanding the emergence of and the workings of markets? That this is the integrative, cooperative, and collaborative process that is brought about through the spontaneous buying and selling of multitudes of people without government direction, command, or control. The nature of the profit motive, the unique role of the entrepreneur, the nature of the competitive process, the importance of appreciating the Austrian focus on capital, investment, and time, and how this is the basis of rising prosperity and rising standards of living, that there is no rising standard of living without an institutional setting of property rights, markets, prices, that provides the ability and the incentives for the savings, investment, and capital creation that gives us the standard of living that we take for granted, and if the market is left alone, will continue to improve our circumstances years, decades, centuries to come. And then the challenges to the working of the market economy. The Austrian critique of why socialism is inherently unworkable as an institutional system, that it is, if you have a full comprehensive system of socialist central planning, how it creates inescapable economic irrationality and economic chaos. The fundamental shortcomings and contradictions of the interventionist system, this part 8, which was just put up on the Future of Freedom Foundation's website this week, is called Government Intervention, Sand in the Machine. Government intervention is not as disruptive and chaotic as full nationalization and imposed central planning, but it's like sand in the machine, that the regulations, controls, restrictions, prohibitions, subsidies, and regulations all act as a way to disrupt the competitive market in terms of innovation, entrepreneurial creativity, the pricing of goods and services, and the opportunity for growth and improvement through various forms of government interventions and regulations. And finally, next week, the last segment, part 9, will then be sort of a capstone of one and perhaps the most egregious form of government regulation, control, and intervention, and that is money in the business cycle. How the government, through its central banking institutions, set in motion the waves of booms and busts, inflations and recessions, that cause disruption, imbalance, distortion throughout the economy. And this is due to the government basically taking over monopoly and dominant influence and control over the money supply and the banking system, and therefore its ability to influence and distort and throw out of balance interest rates and the savings investment relationship upon which all that goes on in the economy is heavily dependent. And I hope that as people watch this series, and as the episodes have been coming out 1 week at a time, again, with great modesty and satisfaction, but a modest satisfaction, some of the comments, the amounts of likes and shares, for example, that have been made of the segments through like Facebook, tells me that there's a thirst and an interest for this. And I like to think that I've been able to present these ideas in a way that is both valuable for a person who's relatively uninformed about the Austrian school, but also adds nuances, depth, understanding to those who have a knowledge of Austrian economics, but would like to know more in greater detail. Then matching that, as you say, and I don't remember whether it was you, Jacob, or me, or the collective mind of both of us at the same time, but when we were deciding to do this project, one or both of us decided, well, wouldn't it be great to have an accompanying book, particularly in the ebook format, not only because it enables it to be done faster and more effectively, but the outreach because of the internet and its ability to be sold and purchased and read virtually anywhere in the world through the facility of Amazon. And what I try to do in the book as a complement to the lecture series is that in the first segment of chapters, I try to give an overview of what is the Austrian school, its fundamental ideas, little biographies and the intellectual contributions of Karl Menger, von Bauwerk, Mises, Hayek, Israel Kirzner, for instance. And then to elaborate on these in terms of their views of the nature of the market, the pricing system, the competitive order, and then having laid that down, who they are, their core ideas, their view of the market process and the pricing system of the capitalist order, then to deal with a variety of policy issues, various forms of government interventions and control, the inhibitions and stymieing of the bureaucratic state, the false bugaboos concerning inequality in the market economy, the understanding that it is government that creates distortions, imbalances, and rigidities that hinder and prevent economic growth, not the market itself. And then the final chapters give a capstone of this on dealing extensively over several chapters with the Austrian theory of money, the nature of the savings and investment relationship, the financial markets, and then how government intervention in the financial markets through central banking inescapably bring about the boom and bust cycle. And I talk about it in the context, not exclusively, but especially in the context of the recent boom and bust cycle we've gone through with the artificial housing and related investment booms of the early part of this century, leading to the crisis of 2008 and 9, and now this sluggish and itself distorted and imbalanced recovery.
Yeah, well, first of all, on the excitement that the book is generating, I should add that we have people in Poland who have asked us if they can translate the video into Polish, and we've granted that permission. And then we recently were asked by a person in Brazil if they could translate it into Portuguese, and we're granting that permission. So the interest is obviously not just here in the United States for Austrian economics, but in different parts of the world. And you, of course, have lectured down in Brazil many years ago at the Instituto Liberal. I think it was our first year of publication of Future Freedom that you went down to Brazil and delivered those lectures. And so maybe the seeds that you planted are germinating because there's obviously some interest in this series. And it's a perfect, like I said earlier, it's a perfect introduction. I mean, especially like for college students. To me, if a college student reads this ebook and watches this video series, he will know more economics than most economics professors. And don't tell your professor that, but it certainly provides great fodder for term papers and things that because the way you present it, Richard, is very easy to understand. Now, one of the points you just made is, I think, is very important in the context of what we're going through today, especially with the election and the campaign. The concept of prosperity. And Austrian economics really directs itself to prosperity, in terms of, well, if people want a higher standard of living, here is how it can be achieved. And you delve into that. Of course, the Austrians delve into it, Hayek, Mises, Henry Hazlitt, and so forth. But on the other side, like in this campaign, you hear them talking about growth, that we've got to get growth in the economy again. And what they mean is something completely different. when they're talking about growth than what the Austrians mean. So would you talk a little bit about that as to how the Austrians are a completely different paradigm than what we're dealing with over here on the statist side of things?
Well, to begin with, when Austrian economists, and to be honest, free market economists in general, talk about growth, they mean the spontaneous emergence of improvements in the material conditions of society arising from the ground up. That is, people work, they save, they either themselves or lend their savings to others for investment purposes. Those undertaking investments are doing it guided by the profit motive of the anticipated that investments today will bring forth revenues in the future sufficient to justify the cost of the investment and hopefully the profit margin that is the stimulus for them to try. That through capital formation, which involves a time-consuming process, a willingness to sacrifice benefits or consumptions and uses of resources in the present for gains in the future, all bring about the rising standard of living by investing in more capital goods, machinery, tools, and equipment, better capital goods, machinery, tools, and equipment, so more goods can be produced, and better and more goods can be produced by making each worker's hour of labor more productive. And that this is all geared towards what entrepreneurs in the private sector view as the wants of consumers. What goods do consumers want? How might I make this product with the qualities, features, and characteristics that they're looking for through this capital-intensive investment process, and for which I'm willing to incur expenses, including the hiring of workers, because I believe that the profit margins might be there. Now, therefore, it's all from the ground up or the bottom up. What people like Trump talk about, or especially Hillary Clinton and others in the political realm talk about, they just encapsulate this in a presidential election. It's the government policy mindset in general, is that growth is not something that arises from the creative interactions, choices, and savings investments of the people of the society themselves, but is somehow given or imposed on the society through government. The government will bring about growth through investing in government-business partnerships. They're going to pick winners and avoid losers. They'll give subsidies for certain technological innovations, such as solar power and solar panels and so on, or ethanol. We'll subsidize ethanol in gasoline, or we'll give protections to a domestic industry so it can grow to mature and quote, create jobs in the American economy. It all is reflective of, Jacob, basically that social engineering planning mentality that left to its own, the market, which means you and me, the people of the society, peacefully interacting for their mutual gains and purposes and benefits, that we, the people, left on our own, cannot make the right savings decisions, the right investment decisions, the right decisions as to what technologies should be developed and implemented in the market, what sectors of the economy should be fostered, which should be set aside. This has to only be done by an elite of experts, the wise, the good, the knowledgeable, the engineers in the political arena and the bureaucracies who presume arrogantly to know more than we know and can use that knowledge more effectively than any of us can in our corners of the society. Now, one of the crucial contributions of the Austrians has been a biting, insightful, and I believe unanswerable critique by both Ludwig von Mises and Friedrich Hayek. And let me just emphasize Hayek's part of this because it gets to the nub of it. And Hayek has hammered away that knowledge is decentralized, dispersed among all the members of multitudes of the society. I know this is hard to believe, Jacob, but even you have limited and imperfect knowledge.
Oh,
I know I've heard you deny that several times, but humility is essential here. But yes, viewers and listeners, even Jacob Hornberger has less than perfect knowledge. I know it's shocking. You may never look at FFF again, but what can I say? But the fact that Hayek is emphasized is that there's a division of knowledge that accompanies the division of labor. And there are different types of knowledge and nuances and layers of knowledge. And it is impossible inherently in a complex society for the planners, the regulators, the social engineers to connect this knowledge, integrate this knowledge, coordinate this knowledge, then use it to make up a plan or a regulatory network of commands and requirements, and then disperse this knowledge back to the individuals to tell them how best to use it. Either the knowledge is used effectively, and at the moment it seems most appropriate to apply it, by the multitudes of now, not just hundreds of millions, but billions of people that are part of the global system of division of labor and trade and commerce, or huge parts of this knowledge get left unused, and we are dependent upon what the finite minds of handfuls of people in government agencies and bureaucracies can know and master to then guide and direct all that we do, even if it's not old-fashioned formal socialist central planning, but through their regulations and their commands and their restrictions and their subsidies to try to get us to do one thing as opposed to another. And therefore, economic improvement, betterment, is restricted to what a handful of minds can know and master, compared to allowing all the minds of the world to be set in motion, guided by self-interest, to use what they know in the best way they can as they see it most informatively in their own corner of the world through the interactive processes of the market that may benefit themselves, but as one of those unintended consequences, as Adam Smith said, the invisible hand, to at the same time improve the circumstances of all those with whom they interact as well.
Yeah, I mean, Austrian economics is really just principles of the free market. I mean, that's really what it is. We're talking about a genuine free market economy. That is an economy that is free of government control and regulation and taxation, where people are free to pursue their happiness in their own way and entering into economic transactions with others. And you indicated the importance of capital in raising people's standard of living. And this is what non-libertarians just don't get, especially people on the left. They want to help the poor. They want to raise people's economic well-being. But means are important. If you choose the wrong means to achieve an end, well, you're not going to achieve an end. And it seems to me that one of the real insights of the Austrian school is that they have figured out the key to poverty. That is the key to rising standards of living for society across the board. And that's through savings, through capital accumulation. And so when you see these debates in the political arena, we need to get the economy humming again, we need growth, they are taking the exact opposite means. They've got more government spending, which means more taxation, more debt. And I think they might really be at the point, Richard, where the welfare warfare state is so humongous that growth is impossible now because of the burden that's placing on the taxpayer. People can't save any more money. And in fact, the statists will say savings doesn't matter. Go out and spend your money at the mall. Get the economy humming. Get the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates even more. And all they end up doing is distorting what the Austrians say is the real market here. That when the Federal Reserve's fooling around with the money supply, it's distorting signals. It's sending false signals to people. Hey, you can go out and buy a house. Interest rates are real low. Hey, you can go out and invest in this new equipment. Look how low interest rates are. And really then when everything starts to shake out and the bubble bursts, we're sitting into a big long-term depression. Now, your point about Hayek and the use of knowledge in society is a great essay by Hayek on that called The Use of Knowledge in Society. I think fits right into this, where people are engaging in their own economic transactions, pursuing happiness in their own way, entering into trades with anyone in the world, accumulating wealth, deciding for themselves what to do with it, and they themselves are capitalizing on their particular knowledge, their expertise at that particular time and place, which the central planner, or as Hillary or Donald would say, we're going to manage the economy. The manager of the economy cannot know all that specific knowledge and information that exists within each person's sphere of operations. And so by having a decentralized system like this where each person is pursuing his own happiness, you bring into existence things that nobody could have ever planned. This is what Hayek called the spontaneous order. And you'll recall that famous essay by Leonard Read about I-Pencil, where a pencil comes into existence because of all of these, like, thousands of transactions that are taking place all over the world, each one independent of each other, but which form a component that ultimately comes into existence as a pencil, as something as that simple, much less, all the other complex things like computers and so forth. So this is what really, I think, Austrian economics is really all about. It's just an explanation of the free market process.
Yeah, and addition to that, it's not just that those planners cannot know everything. It's also the institutionally, what knowledge is there the incentive to acquire? In the marketplace, each and every participant has a self-interest in acquiring knowledge that will enhance his own economic well-being, but in the marketplace only by doing so in a way that will benefit others to whom you hope to sell a product or provide a service, and on the basis of which you will earn the income, the revenue, that will enable you to then, as a consumer in turn, to buy the things that you desire. So the worker is deciding, well, what education should I get? What tech school should I attend? What things should I study on my own to have more experience? Based upon what? What will get me a better paying job? Which means, what talent or skill can I have that an employer would consider valuable enough for what he's doing in his enterprise that he'd be willing to pay me wage X plus 3 instead of what I've been earning X plus 1. Now, at the same time, the businessman, the entrepreneur, what is the focus of his knowledge acquisition in his corner of the market? What is it that consumers want that I might have the expertise to produce and manufacture? What qualities, what features, what characteristics, what technologies that are being developed or are being used already in another part of the economy would be most useful and applicable in my corner of my sector of the economy? So everything is focused upon not only using the knowledge that you possess, but not only using it effectively, but acquiring new knowledge guided by the market incentives. How does it compare to the politicians and the bureaucrats? What knowledge is important to a politician? How do I con the voters to believing that what I'm saying, that they'll give me campaign contributions and go into the voting booth on election day and elect me? Or as Hillary Clinton from the released Wall Street speeches now have confirmed. What do I say to the dumb, unwashed masses? That's the public position I have. And what do I say privately to all of you special interest groups that if you give me your campaign contributions, if I'm elected, well, things will keep humming along in the interventionist way it has been, and there might even be more government goodies coming your way because I'm so appreciative that you financially have helped to see that I get elected. The bureaucrats are the same way. What are their knowledge incentives? Besides using the knowledge, however limited they may have, what knowledge are they interested in? What do I need to know to regulate more, to control more, to restrict more, to command more? It's not just the knowledge is decentralized. It's that the incentive motive of what knowledge to acquire is totally different. One is based upon more and better production to serve others in the society, the market, versus what knowledge do I need to have to manipulate people to have power? That's a totally different knowledge problem that these segments of the society are focusing on.
Yeah, we're really talking about an entirely different paradigm here. I mean, that's the thing about Austrian economics. It doesn't purport to operate within the paradigm of the welfare state, the managed economy, interventionism. Right. It's to replace this system that has caused so much damage to people, especially people at the bottom of the economic ladder. I mean, we're talking about an entirely different economic system for America, one that's based on the free market. I mean, that's really the heritage of America. If you go back to 1776 with Adam Smith's famous book, The Wealth of Nations, and you go up to the classical economists, I mean, everything orients toward the concept of economic liberty, the thing that you raise in this book. Why don't we wrap it up with why you have that subtitle, Restoring Freedom? Why is freedom an essential aspect of understanding these principles of Austrian economics, Richard?
Well, let me say that there's two dimensions of the emphasis on freedom. One goes beyond economics, any school of thought, including the Austrian, and that is the belief, philosophically, ideologically, ethically, that the freedom of the individual is good in itself, that each human being is unique and distinct and special, and that unique and special individual who has only one sojourn on this earth should have the latitude and liberty to peacefully live his life as he sees fit, guided by the goals and purposes that will give value and meaning and purpose to his time here that he has. The second element of that is that each individual is likely to have the most opportunity to give meaning and value and purpose to their life in a social setting in which not only they but all others have the latitude and liberty to use that special knowledge that they possess that others don't in ways that benefit themselves but can only do so through the interactive and voluntary and peaceful processes of the marketplace through the interdependency of the division of labor of society. So that freedom is an end in itself. You, as a distinct individual, I say this to the listeners and the viewers, each of us is a distinct and unique individual. Each of us want the freedom to live our lives, to give value, meaning, and pleasure and satisfaction to it for however long our life is. And at the same time, to do so, we should value as a means to our own selfish end the liberty of others in the marketplace and in other facets of life, so we can gain and benefit from what those others know and can do and could interact in ways with us to enhance our life opportunities that we could never have if others did not have that same liberty as well. So freedom is both an end in itself and a means to the improved ends of all of us as shared members of society. That is why freedom is important. And in prosperity, that's the outcome of men using their minds in creative and innovative ways through these mutual interactions. And when we talk about prosperity, it's not just the improvement of material goods and services. Of course, those are desirable. Having the better physical goods and services that enable us to do things easier and better and in ways we couldn't do before to alleviate time, costs, and the burdens of things. But prosperity means cultural and intellectual and social in the broadest sense. Prosperity enables us to pursue all of these avenues of life for our betterment, and not just those involving, in the narrow sense, material goods and services. That's what prosperity is. It's dependent upon freedom. And freedom cannot be, in both those two senses, as an end in itself and as a means to all of our ends by allowing others liberty as well, unless we have the right institutional setting. And that institutional setting is a constitution that respects and enforces individual rights, that recognizes and enforces private property rights, that recognizes and enforces that the only human relationships that are just, good, and right are those that are voluntary and peaceful and mutually agreed upon among the members of the society. And if we do so, we have the good society and the wealthy society, and without the state commanding and controlling, but through each of us pursuing our lives as we choose, but bettering each other through the gains of the marketplace.
Oh, very well put. The title of the book, Austrian Economics and Public Policy. Richard, hang up. There you go. And available on Amazon.com. And then the video series is called An Introduction to Austrian Economics. Part 8 is now on our website now at fff.org. And the final part of the series, Part 9, will be posted next week. Richard, enjoyed the show. Thanks for joining me, and see you next week.
Until next week, Jacob, take care. Bye-bye.